Hello everyone. Hello everyone.
Good morning. Okay, I think we can start.
Yes.
Well, not really, because it's just half of you here. So maybe as we wait for the others, I will ask you something about this YouTube thing that some of you suggested we use for the videos. So I do have a YouTube channel and I am uploading now the first video. You suggested that I I create a separate list that only people who are present in it can access, right? But how do I do that?
I do not know. I suggested Google Drive so you can share it to people so people who have the link can watch the videos or download it on their own. YouTube is an alternative, but I'm not sure how YouTube works.
Ah, Google Drive. I can put, I have the videos on Google Drive. That's where I store them. And where do I go from there?
So you can, when you right click the folder where you store all the videos, then there's an option which allows you to share the link. And when you click or share, when you click share, you can either choose to allow it to share to only yourself, people you allow permissions to share to, or
But,
you can enable link sharing so people with the link can go and open the folder.
but
Then you
wait,
can
you
send
do,
the link to this
but can you do this with Mac? Because Mac doesn't seem to give me
this
this
option
option.
on Google Drive.
Yeah.
It should be inbuilt into the Google Drive website.
Well, if I click on the folder where I have all the videos, there is no such option coming out.
Ah, I think you must click you must be at the screen where you can see the folder itself with all the videos inside.
Yeah, that's where I am. I'm a
Oh,
folder, and there is no such. If I click on the folder, the only thing that happens, the videos come out, the list of videos. That's it.
Prof,
okay.
I use sorry Yongchun. Prof, I use a Mac. Maybe I could just record a very fast video onto how to upload a video onto Google Drive, and I'll send it to you
Okay.
after
All right.
class.
Thank you. Thank you. In any case, these computers, for all they talk about design and blah 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 blah, they are the most difficult things to use ever. No, I mean, I'm serious. How difficult is it to use a book? I mean, if you know how to read, it's the most intuitive tool that is out there. These damn computers, I mean, the more the time goes ahead, the more complicated and unreadable they become.
Ah, yeah.
It's
Well, to name all the huge corporations who dictate
and
how this is all going.
Start switch it off.
Hey Jonathan, you're not muted.
Oops, sorry.
Oh,
all right,
yes.
wait 2 more minutes.
Hmm.
No, I'm really surprised at how difficult these things are becoming. To tell you the truth, I remember that a few years back, even just a few years back, at least as far as Mac is concerned, it was more intuitive than it is now. A week ago, I bought a new Mac because my old one was acting up and the battery basically spoiled, and it would have costed more to change the battery than to get a new computer, basically. Well, not really, but all in all. Well, in any case, I remember that when I bought the last Mac, in half an hour at the store, we were done uploading all the material that I had on the yet previous Mac. And well, it was easy to go through. With this new one, my wife, because I'm unable to do these things by myself, it seems even my wife was tech savvy, like you. Well, it took her more than 3 hours. And then when it came to the password problem, the password for certain applications inbuilt in the computer, basically she had to use 3 more hours and read a lot of stuff online in order to understand what to do precisely. I mean, a tool that should be used by everybody, designed in that way, is a disaster. It's basically a disaster. It's as if for each new book that I open, I need to learn a new language and a new alphabet. It's just impossible. So, I mean, maybe as future engineers, one of your tasks will be that of simplifying what is getting more and more complicated by the year, basically.
That's what's happening with any new program that's being developed. Because if you look at, for example, GitHub and the available programs that you can use, every single one of these programs has a README page where they teach you how to use it. So for each one of these programs, you want to use them, you have to read the instructions manual, basically. Because each of
these instruction manuals sometimes are like very long and very complicated to understand. Also because they use a lot of ciphers and abbreviations that end up being quite obscure. So overall, it's a disaster. It's a real disaster. So it
Kind
frustrates
of sounds
users.
like a little book, huh?
Again?
Kind of, the user manual kind of sounds.
You keep breaking up.
I think he was just unmuted.
Oh. All right.
But
So,
with regards to computers, I think we should all learn to use the command line terminal. Then everything will be simpler.
yeah. To be honest, I will go back just to paper and pen and a good book. So far, as far as I'm concerned, I think that the book and the notebooks remain the most advanced technological thing that is out there. Okay, all right. Let's go now to today's class. I see that the vast majority of you are here. I also hope that the vast majority of you pay attention. That I cannot guarantee. Of course, it would be better if we were to be together in the same classroom, but we can't. So we have to do with what we have and with the situation we're stuck with. Okay, so today, as we said, we're gonna start clarifying one or two keywords. Well, for sure, two keywords. The first one is the word Eidos. The second one is the word logos. Now, to start this clarification, I want to start with the text of Plotinus that I had highlighted to you as the central point in this treatise. And in fact, a central point to understand Plotinus's thought in general. Now, wait a second. Okay, it's chapter 7, the end of chapter 7. I had highlighted to you this sentence already. Let me write it down. So, chapter 7, the lines refer to the Greek text, of course. 22, 23. I'll write it in Greek first, and then I will transliterate it and then translate, okay? By the way, the fact that I keep referring to the Greek is not for snobbery. It's important that we stick to the original text because as you have seen, when I first introduced to you this passage, the translation is quite arguable at times. So it's important that we stick to the Greek text. I realize that you don't read Greek. Well, that's something that you could learn, at least to read it. The alphabet, the Greek alphabet in the end is the matrix out of which the Latin alphabet, the one that we use, comes. And by the way, it's an alphabet that is still in use in Greece, and it also is also the matrix for all the Cyrillic alphabets, that is, let's say, the alphabets used in the Slavic countries. So you may want to learn at least how to read it. It's not that difficult. In any case, we keep referring to the Greek because we have to go through a careful work of understanding precisely what Plotinus is saying. And in order to do that, we must stick to the language he used. Any thought, and hence any experience of things, unfolds always and only in language. But language is not a one phenomenon. Language comes as different languages. So each language opens up a different perspective on things. In order to fully grasp what Plotinus is saying, we have to understand what he says in the language that was his language, namely Greek. That's why I keep referring to the Greek text, okay? Not out of snobbery or to be pedantic. So the text is, now there is even the autocorrector for ancient Greek, because the computer now knows ancient Greek. Sorry, I'm a bit slower than usual because the computer keeps correcting the ancient Greek with the modern Greek. I don't know, this new Mac has new powers.
Hi, Prof. So, should we learn ancient Greek or the modern Greek?
Ancient Greek, of course. Plotinus spoke ancient Greek.
Is there a website you can recommend us to learn it? Like,
learn
if you're going
what?
to Google it, most learn Greek because you asked us. Remember, you actually requested us to learn Greek just now.
Wait, you want to learn just how to read it, or you want to learn the language?
I mean, it's impossible to read it without learning the language, right?
No, you can learn the alphabet. You can learn the alphabet and hence learn how to read it. I mean, I can read Russian. I just don't know what it means, but I can read it. I can read Turkish because it's written with the Latin alphabet. I just don't know what it means. So one thing is to learn how to read it. Quite another is to know the language, right? So if you want to learn how to read it, you must learn by heart the 25 characters of the alphabet. That's it. And then you exercise, and it becomes quite quick for you to recognize what they the sound of each letter. If you want to learn the language, well, that's a much more complicated process, which takes a long time.
I see.
Also, Prof, right? If you have the issue with your computer program correcting your words, you might want to turn off the spell check.
Oh, I see. Well, I'll have to figure that out later. I'll do that later though. So that's the transliteration, and the translation is translation whereas Armstrong, which is your translator, says for creating is bringing a form into being. Okay, so the text that we start from is this one. This is the central text of this entire treatise, and in many ways, the central text, the central utterance, not text, the central utterance of Plotinus's thought. And I dare say, not only of Plotinus's thought, but of Platonism in general. What does this text say? Let's read it again once more in Greek. Το γαρποιήν εινέτη, ειδώσεις την ποιήν. Translated, it sounds. For to make something be is to make an eidos. Or for to make something into a being means to make an eidos. Armstrong translates, for creating is bringing a form into being. Armstrong's translation, as I told you last time that we touched on this sentence, is untenable, both grammatically and even just for its meaning and for the choice of words. The choice of words. Armstrong uses the word create, but create is not the same, is different from, it's other than making. Create, as I told you, comes from Latin creare, which in turn is connected to the verb crescere, that is to say, grow. So create, what it says actually, is to make grow. Who is the one who creates? According to the actual meaning of the word creating, the gardener. The gardener creates the plants. He makes them grow. Okay? If you learn Italian or Spanish, you will realize that words that are connected to the root of the word creare, create, are used to refer to children, are used to refer to education. Both in my language and in Spanish, crianza, in Spanish crianza, means the educating. Creatura means the young child that you have to raise. So to create doesn't mean to make. You want to have a further proof of the fact that that's not the meaning of the verb? If you read the Bible in Greek or in Latin, what is the verb that they use to refer to the action of God bringing things into existence? How many of you know the Bible? I know that Joel for sure knows the Bible. How many others have ever read the Bible? At least the first lines of the Bible.
Only the English translation.
And what does the English translation say? In the beginning,
God created the heavens and the earth.
wrong, right? It's wrong. If you were able to read Hebrew, which I myself am not able to read, I know a few sentences in Hebrew. Well, the Hebrew Bible says, Bereshit baracha Elohim haolam yeretz. Baracha is the verb. How is that baracha translated in Greek? With ephesen. In the beginning, God made heaven and earth, or the sky and the earth. In Latin, in principio fecit Deus caelum et terram. Again, in the beginning, God made the sky and the earth. If you go see the creed, the Nicene Creed, which again, those of you who are Christians must know by heart. We believe in one God, Almighty Father, etc., etc., right? In Latin and Greek, again, God is called in Greek the Pietis, the maker. And in Latin is called the factor, that is to say again, the maker. So create doesn't mean to make. Create, as we said, means to raise, means to make something grow. Hence, the translation of Armstrong is already off from there, from that point. But more fundamentally, the translation of Armstrong makes creating the subject of the sentence. But is creating the subject of the sentence? No. The subject of the sentence is make something, to make something be. The action of making something be is making an eidos. The second part, making an eidos, is an apposition to that subject. Okay? So what is Plotinus saying? Plotinus is saying that anything that is an eidos. And that an eidos is the result of some kind of making. Okay? The problem then in this sentence becomes what is making precisely? What does it mean to make? All right? And in this entire treatise that we have here, that's precisely what Plotinus tries to explain. What is making? Or put in other words, how do things come into existence? Is it clear so far? Clear for everybody?
Sorry, Prof. I got a question.
Yeah.
So, like, if I refer to the Bible, the transliteration from the Hebrew, right? The word create is bara, then the word make is asa. So that's why in verse 27, God says, let us make man in our likeness. So that is different from, so in Genesis 1:27, it says, let us make man in our likeness. So they use the word asa, which is different from bara, create. Why is that so? Let us.
Well, as I told you before, I don't know Hebrew. I base myself on the translation of the 70 sages who translated it in Greek, and the translation of Saint Jerome, who translated it in Latin. Now, in these translations, the verb creare does not appear. And there is a reason for that. Because the verb creare in Latin means to make something grow. So is God a gardener? It's not that we were pre-existing and God made us grow. God made us directly out of nothing. Okay? That's why using the verb create is ambiguous. Also because Plotinus uses precisely the verb that in Greek means to make. Piein. The verb piein is an extremely important verb in Greek. Out of piein, as I told you last time, comes the word pietis, poet. In our languages, the word pietis has given to the word poet. But pietis in Greek doesn't mean only poet in the sense of the one who writes verses, in the sense of the writer. It means any maker. The architect is a pietis. The artisan who works the wood is a pietis. The one who establishes laws for the city is a pietis as well. So the verb piein and the word derived from it, pietis, refer to making. The question is, what does it mean to make? What is making precisely? Why does Plotinus take this question so to say, so full force? Well, precisely because at this time, a certain understanding of the coming into being of things had started emerging, according to which understanding the coming into being of things was the result of an act of manipulation out of nothing by an entity, namely God, whose operation was understood basically as the operation of an artisan. Okay? If you read the Bible again, if you read the various accounts of the making of things by God, that's what comes out. God has made things out of nothing, and then he has shaped them. Hence, what kind of understanding of making lurks there? An understanding of making whereby making consists basically in a cause and effect. There is something that causes, and this something that causes an effect. The coming into being of things is the effect of a deliberate action. Okay? Plotinus goes against this vision. He cannot agree, he cannot find himself in alignment with this vision that he reputes to be alien to the tenets of Greek thought. So he makes explicit again what making means according to Plato's thought. Is that clear? Now, this question regarding the essence of making, because that's the problem here, the essence of making, what making actually is a fundamental question, also for us. Also for us, because for us as well, making is mostly understood as causing an effect. But is that so?
So, Prof, so you're referring to the making or create?
Making, cancel creating out. I mean, creating, you should cancel it out.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Prof.
Okay. The God of the Bible makes. But if you reflect on what that making means, it means causing an effect. So there is an agent that through an act of deliberation causes a certain effect. Okay? If you ask yourself about what making means, this definition of making, that is to say causing an effect, an agent causing an effect to an act of deliberation, is reductive. Okay?
Sorry, can I just clarify what you mean by cancelling out create? So is there any occasion where we can use this term?
Well, for sure you cannot use it if you want to be precise when you talk about what the Bible thinks when it thinks about the coming into being of things. Okay? So you can use it loosely, because now it's a word that is used loosely, but it's a loose word, as I said.
Oh, I'm meaning precisely. Is there any like precise manner by which you can use?
Precise?
Yeah, are there any precise scenarios where we can use the term create accurately?
Well, as I told you, the actual way of using the word creating is referring to taking care of things that grow. And these things that grow can be animals, human beings, or plants. That's it. There is another usage of the word create. In English, is not so much in use, but is in use in the Latin languages. It means to elevate someone to a certain status. So, for example, you say, he has been created president. He has been created king. It means that this person has been elevated to another level, okay, to a higher level. These are the proper uses of the word create. But if you want to be faithful to what, for example, is said in the Bible, God doesn't create, God makes. God makes like an artisan. In the Bible, God makes like an artisan. Is that clear?
Prof,
Yeah.
do you mind repeat what is artisan?
Artisan. What is an artisan? I mean, I don't know. Someone who works the wood, someone who makes bread, someone who builds something is an artisan. That is to say, he takes certain things and shapes them in a certain way. That's an artisan. What does an artisan do? He does what he does, he shapes what he shapes by looking at a certain model that he has in mind. Right? Correct? All right. So, let's go back. Plotinus is countering a view of making whereby making is understood solely as the causing an effect by an agent. In the sentence that I gave to you as the central one to start perusing this text, Plotinus says that in reality, things are different. Making has to do with eidos. Because anything that is, insofar as it is an eidos. And an eidos is the result of some kind of making. What kind of making? The making of the artisan? Is the eidos the effect of an agent? No. So first thing, what does making mean? Second thing that that sentence says, it says that everything that is, insofar as it is, in fact, anything that is, insofar as it is an eidos. So my dog, in a certain way, is an eidos. Each one of you, in a certain way, is an eidos. Everything that exists, insofar as it exists, participates in the eidos, is, to a certain extent, an eidos. That's why, in the second translation that I propose to you, I say, to make something into a being. Any entity, any being, any particular being, insofar as it is a being, is an eidos. The question then becomes, what is an eidos? What does eidos mean? Why does Plotinus use this word? Where does this word come from? Okay, so to go in order, we start from this second question. What is an eidos? And then once we have clarified this, we'll be able to go into the first question, which is actually the most complex one, and is the one that will require the careful reading of this entire treatise. Namely, what does making mean? In any case, one positive point, well, it's positive only in the sense that it negates something that we hold true without thinking about it too much. But one positive point that we can already start from is that we cannot reduce the understanding of making to the causing an effect. That's a reductive understanding of what making means. Okay? And we will then go into the question, what does it mean to make later on? For now, let's stay on the question, what is an eidos? Okay? Now, before I go there, let me check if there are questions. Would it be correct to say that the clear differentiator is that create as connotations of nourishing or growing something? Well, yeah, as I said, creating has to do with making something grow, okay? Making, the way it is normally understood, in a reductive way, means to shape, to cause an effect, okay? All right, now, let's go into the word eidos. What does it mean? Eidos is the other word almost synonymical with the word idea. Translated literally, eidos means aspect, look, the look, the outlook that something gives. For example, in ancient Greek, you could say that someone is eidos, similar to the gods. He's so handsome that he looks like a god. It gives the outlook of being a god. So eidos means the aspect, the outlook, what one appears to view. And what is then the word idea? Idea is the inner part, so to say, of this outlook. Idea is the source of that aspect. The thing itself that through the aspect gives itself to be seen. So you could say that a table looks like a table because it participates precisely into the idea of table. And in that sense, because it is a table. Now, that's the way in which, in basic Greek, the words idea and eidos were used. From here, you can already see a huge difference between the actual ancient meaning of these words in Greek, in ancient Greek, and the way in which we use them. When we say idea today, we always refer to something that we understand to be the result of our mental processes, right? So we say, I had an idea. I came up with an idea. My idea is, and so on and so forth, according to his idea. So idea in all these expressions can mean something that I've conjured up with my mind, something that I've come up with, something that I hold as my view, someone's opinion, his idea is, okay, according to your idea, and so on and so forth. In all these acceptations, typical of our modern usage of the word idea, the word idea means overall something that has to do with the mental activity of the human being. So as the result of mental processes. If you instead stick to the ancient acceptation of the word, the idea is at once something much simpler, but at the same time, much more difficult for us to grasp. It refers simply to the outlook that things give to us. Now, this word idea was used, starting from its ancient acceptation, that of outlook, by Plato. And he used it in a particular way. Plato used this word to talk about the core of each thing. What did Plato say? Plato said that each thing is what it is because it participates in the idea. So, my dog is a dog because he participates in the idea dog. I am a man because I participate in the idea man. Each single tree is a tree because each single tree participates in the idea tree. What is the idea then? The idea is the stable, mark my word, stable, unchanging reality based on which each particular thing is what it is. How did Plato reach this conclusion? How did Plato reach the conclusion that there are stable, unchanging realities that form the original paradigm out of which the various instances come out? How did Plato reach this? Simply by noticing the evidence that I was referring to you, I was telling you last time, namely the fact that the human being knows things because he knows things. The human being knows what a tree is. He doesn't need anybody to teach him what a tree is. The human being knows what a dog is. He doesn't need anybody to teach him what a dog is. The human being, in other words, sees things as things, sees whatever surrounds him as many things, which is something that other creatures don't do. So the human being lives in the presence of these stable outlooks. That's how Plato reaches the conclusion that there are ideas, that everything that is the coming forth, let's use this word for now, the coming forth of something stable out there, which then comes forth as this particular tree, as this particular dog. But I can recognize this this thing that crawls in front of me as a dog only because I already know what a dog is. Okay? We saw last week that the objection according to which what Plato is referring to is in reality a process of induction is untenable, because that would entail a process ad infinitum. That is to say, if one were to say, oh, but I reached the conclusion of what a dog is because I put together all things that have 4 legs and have a tail of a certain shape and make a certain sound and blah, 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 blah. Well, it means that I have to know what legs are, what tails are, and so on and so forth. Okay? So the process of induction is not a valid one to understand how Plato reached the understanding of what the idea is. The idea, instead, is an evidence. It is evident that the human being relates to what surrounds him as many things. And that's what Plato is talking about when he talks about idea. Now, let me see the questions. Could I clarify that when you mention outlook, yeah, is the external appearance of a thing. I mean, a thing appears to you as a thing, as something, right? It hits you with a certain aspect. Correct? Now, that's already where the mystery lies. That is to say, what is this? Where does this outlook come from? How come that, to me, what I call tree always appears as a tree? How come that to me what I call stone always appears as a stone? There is an appearance there, an outlook that is charged, as we said last week, with meaning. It's charged, that is to say, with being part of a net of connections, meaningful connections. And as we said last week, let us repeat it, this is a fact. It's an evidence. It doesn't need any demonstration. It is evident that things are so. Okay? So Eidos is the reason why we recognize things as things. Yes, that's what Plato says. Eidos is the reason why we recognize things as things. Now, this conclusion of Plato can be a bit problematic. We'll see why later on, okay? I can just anticipate to you that this is problematic because in Plato's view, the ethos is something per se completely independent from the relation with the human being. And that's what is problematic in Plato's understanding of his intuition. In other words, Plato has had a very deep intuition which hits on an evidence, on a piece of evidence, as such inconfutable. Namely, that the human being lives at the level of things. And at this level, whatever surrounds us gives us a certain outlook, independent of us. Independent of us. Okay? Where Plato then starts going his own way is the moment in which it starts building on this evidence and starts drawing certain conclusions. The first one of which being that each eidos is a reality fundamentally unrelated to the human being. That is to say, independent of the human being. Something that exists per se, even if humans did not exist. And that's where Plato starts going off, but we'll see this later on. Now, let's see, there are two more questions, and then there are some of you raised their hand. So let me see the other questions. No, an eidos is not a characteristic, because a characteristic is a vague term. A characteristic means something that I can assign to something after perusing it. An eidos is something much more fundamental. An eidos is that thing whereby each thing appears as a thing. If a tree appears as a tree, it's because I know the eidos tree. It's because it gives me the outlook of tree, which means that as a human being, I always have these outlooks in front of me. Okay? So it's not a characteristic. It's something much more fundamental. I can talk of characteristics only because I already start from eidos. Does eidos also relate to non-physical concepts like mathematics? Of course, eidos is non-physical. You cannot touch an eidos. And of course, it refers to mathematics as well. Numbers are eidi. We all know what the number 2 is, don't we? But have you ever seen the number two crawling around? I haven't. And yet we know what it is. We all know what the triangle is. And yet nobody has ever seen the triangle crawling around. Mathematical and geometrical objects are for Plato the best example of eidi. Things that we know precisely what they are, and yet they're not out there. I mean, they're not among the tangible things. And yet they do exist. Of course they exist. Then the other question, does this mean that the common assumption that knowledge is the accumulation of data is untenable? The common modern conception that if an AI accumulates sufficient data, yes, it means precisely that. Knowledge is not the accumulation of data. Otherwise, as I told you last week, a shark will be infinitely more knowledgeable than us. But the difference between me and a shark is that notwithstanding the superiority of his sensory apparatus, the shark can only react. The shark doesn't understand things. And that's why the shark swallows down car plaques, plastic stuff, human beings, other fishes, rocks, whatever. My dog, which is more intelligent than a shark indeed, but my dog mostly lives at the reactive level. That's why my dog doesn't understand that, for example, he doesn't have to bark every time he sees someone. Because a dog lives mostly trapped in mechanisms of stimulus and reaction to the stimulus. If I bring my dog to class, it's not that my dog is going to sit there and at least pretend that he's listening, because he understands, oh, I'm in a classroom, I should behave as if I'm interested and as if I'm following. Hence, let me sit down, sticking my chest out and giving an attentive look, which is what most students do, right? Even when you're not interested, that's what you do. You say, oh, I'm in a classroom, the professor is looking at me, so let me, sit straight and pretend that I'm listening. Why do you do that? Because you understand that you cannot act there as if you were in your bedroom. Well, for a dog, classroom, bedroom, bathroom, living room is all the same. Okay? So, going back to the AI question, knowledge is not the result of accumulation of data. The accumulation of data, and also the word data or datum, more correctly, is an ambiguous word, okay? The accumulation of data, anyway, is possible only because we already know things, because we see things as things, and then we can catalogize them as this or that. Okay? So can the Eidos exist even without the logos to manifest it? This question by Wei Min is exactly the excruciating point about Platonism and the point of divide between Platonism and Aristotle. Now, to answer this question fully would take us away from what we're trying to clarify now. So let's keep this question for later, okay? But this question that Wei Min is posing is crucial. So please, everybody, if you have a notebook, and I hope you do, write that question down. The question is, can Eidos exist even without the logos to manifest it? Write it down, because this question is fundamentally the question that we'll have to deal with at the end of this course. Okay? Then, can I say that Eidos is something that all humans are born with? Yes, all humans are born in the presence of Eidi, all of them, by being human. Okay? Don't things appear as things because of humans and the fact that we associate a meaning to it? Why does Plato say that Eidos exist independent of human beings? It's not that we associate a meaning to it arbitrarily. It's not that we go around and stick names to things. Or it's not that we go around and we try to figure out what things are by a process of association. We are born already knowing that things are things. That's what Plato says. And as I said, this statement of Plato hits on an evidence. The human being is that strange being that relates to whatever surrounds him as things. That is to say, as entities, as realities, as objects, call them whatever you want, charged with meaning. Charged with meaning doesn't mean that the human being sticks meaning on them. The meanings of the various things appear to the human being. Okay? Then I thought that it is like, for example, a circle. There is never a perfect sphere in the universe, but even without human observation, stars and planets tend to be a sphere. Well, no, stars and planets do not tend to be spheres. they are each a different object. For example, the Earth is not spherical at all. It seems that the Earth resembles more like a Chinese pear than a sphere. And so the other planets. So the geometrical understanding of the universe is, on the one hand, the result of Platonism, the direct result of Platonism, according to which, since the universe is the mirror of the perfection of the material world, it must be geometrically perfect. On the other, it is the enduring result of Platonism in modern physics, insofar as modern physics keeps geometrizing everything. Why does modern physics keep geometrizing everything? Out of the fact that geometrizing anything allows us to do stuff, allows us to reduce things to the calculable. And why do we want to calculate everything? Everything in order to use it. Okay? I think because meaning exists before we make the association, the concept of a tree existed before a human perceives it. So I guess it's a question of present. Well, it's not that the concept of a tree existed. If you talk about concepts, concepts can exist only in the mind of the human being. We're not talking about concepts. We're talking about the fact that the moment a human being opens his eyes, he relates to what surrounds him as things. And hence, he behaves towards these things in a certain way, different according to each thing. A dog doesn't do that. He simply doesn't. Okay? So we're not talking about concepts. We're talking about something that is independent of any mental construction. It is thanks to this fact that then we can go ahead and create mental constructions. Okay? And then, so the meaning is not assigned, the meaning is not assigned by human. We are caught in meaning. We can play with meaning, but we are not the creators of meaning. We're not the makers of meaning. Now, Wei Min has a question. He raised his hand.
Yes. Hi, Prof. So just now you talked about the stability of the Eidos. So it's the source of coming into being of anything. And then subsequently you wrote in the thematic analysis that this stability, which is dynamis, actually refers to a form of dynamism. So the stability is actually grounded at a constant being at work, which you wrote. So why do we still use the word stability when we subsequently will understand it as this stability being grounded at a constant being at work?
Well, we use the word stability because stability is not the opposite of being at work. That's why we have to start, and that's why Plotinus not eliminates, but he sees the concept of making as causing an effect limiting. In which understanding of the word being at work does the word stability appear as its opposite? Only if we understand the expression being at work as moving from A to B. And that's how, under the thrust mostly of modern physics, of Cartesian physics, we understand being at work as motion from A to B. But there is a being at work that doesn't involve motion. and that as such, doesn't involve any concept of displacement. For example, the being at work whereby a living thing keeps growing doesn't involve any movement from A to B. It's instead an internal dynamism whereby that growing thing keeps itself in being, keeps itself in existence. That's why the stability of the idea of the ethos is not opposite to its being at work, and hence to its being dynamic. Whereby dynamic, again, doesn't have to be understood as moving from A to B, but as the unfolding of a potency. Dynamic, by the way, is another word that comes from the Greek, dynamis. Dynamis in Greek means potency, power. Modern physics does know realities that are at once stable and dynamic. For example, when modern physics talks about the stable energy running through the universe, is stable in the sense that it maintains itself, not in the sense that it is unmoved. And it moves not in the sense that goes from A to B, but in the sense that it operates. It keeps itself up. And by keeping itself up, it keeps anything else up. Okay? Can we clarify on the text itself at end of chapter 2? Well, I have to look at the text precisely. Which chapter is it? I think.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, hello. 363.
Which
actually, it's before 2.
What again?
Sorry, I think it's the second page of the PDF.
The second page of the PDF. But the chapter, which chapter is it?
I think it's 3. On nature and contemplation and the one. Is this the text that we're supposed to be referencing?
Yeah, but so it has, if you look, the text has little numbers.
Yeah, it's
like
okay. It's
and company.
Right above 2.
Right above 2. Okay. I think I found it.
Yeah, I'm just unable to process like exactly what is this last tale, you know.
Which it does not have. Well, the which refers to contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll go there later on, okay? Next week, we'll start reading the text. For now, I really want you to understand the word eidos.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So,
okay.
The word, long story short, the word eidos for Plato refers to the core of each thing, participating into which each thing is what it is. So again, simple example, my dog is what it is because he participates in the ethos dog. What is the difference between the ethos dog and my dog? The difference is that my dog is an image of the ethos dog, is transient. It will disappear. It won't stay. Whereas the ethos dog, that one is not transient. It's eternal. It enjoys unchanging stability. An unchanging stability which is in itself dynamic. Okay? Now, this dynamism is the part of the making. And that's what Plotinus tries to understand. What is this dynamism whereby the ethos is constantly made? That's what this treatise tries to understand. But by taking things this way, Plotinus has already distanced himself from the understanding of the coming into being of things as the result of a causing, an external causing that brings about certain effects. In other words, Plotinus is already saying each thing fundamentally is an ethos. And each ethos is not the effect of a causing. Each ethos somehow makes itself through an internally stable dynamism. Okay? That's about ethos.
Hi, Professor. I'm still slightly confused because, yes, Eidos is the outlook of a thing, but one thing can have multiple. Is it possible for one thing to have multiple Eidos? So, for example, if I have a pet, the pet is at the same time a dog. It's also at the same time maybe a partner. It's also at the same time has the ED of one, so it's like one dog.
Those are not ED. Those are the relations that you can establish with it.
Oh, so the Eidos of a thing is, so anything only has one Eidos, but there can be multiple relations.
The point is that both me and you, both I and you, agree on the fact that that's a dog.
Yes.
How come we have this fundamental agreement?
It's a priori.
Exactly. Kant will call it the a priori. Okay?
So what about the relations we establish with it?
The relations we establish with it, that's another problem. But we can establish these different relations only because both of us know what we're talking about.
So are relations also an Eidos?
No, the relations are relations to the ethos. They're not easy. They are ways in which one can establish a relation with this thing.
Because you mentioned that numbers, for example, 1 is an ED, but when I say it's one dog, it's not an ED.
The one particular dog is not an ethos. The ED there are the ethos dog and the ethos one.
Oh.
But my dog is, yes, a single dog, but is neither the one nor is he the dog.
So it's a relation of two separate Eidos, which we established on our own, but they are not the Eidos themselves.
Yeah, my dog is not the ethos itself. My dog is this dog. But I can say this dog only because I know the dog.
Oh, so when things appear to us, it is.
It is thanks to easy. It is thanks to the fact that we already know the easy. That's why we can recognize dog, cat, tree, number one, number two, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, let me stress it again. This thing of the ethos as the fundamental ground, thanks to which the human being can relate to things as things, is an evidence, is a piece of evidence. If you try and dismantle this piece of evidence, you won't be able to do that. And that's the strength of Platonism. Platonism keeps being, in many ways, the overarching philosophy on which all of Western civilization rests. And when I say Western civilization, I mean physics, mathematics, and company, for a good reason. Because it's based on a piece of absolutely undeniable evidence. Okay? The question is, what do we do of this evidence? Plato has built an entire system on this evidence. We don't need to agree with this system. Okay? Now, Waymin has raised his hand.
Sorry, Prof. I forgot to lower. Yeah. Okay, you can continue. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, since it is 11:20 and in a bit I have another class, I will stop here for now. Now, let's do this. Next week, instead of clarifying logos abstractly, let's start reading the text, okay? And by next week, I hope I can send you, before the beginning of the week or maybe by Monday, my translation of at least the first chapter, so that we can use both my translation and Armstrong's translation and compare the two. So what I would ask you to do is to re-listen to this class if we manage to put it on YouTube or wherever we manage to publish it. Reread again the treatise, because this treatise has to be read many, many times in order to start wrapping our minds around it. I myself, after many years of rereading it and rereading the entire work of Plotinus around it, I still struggle to really wrap my mind around it. So if you feel sometimes in class that we proceed in a...
So sorry, Professor.
Okay.
I had some problems.
No problem. If you feel that we proceed in a slow way, it has to do with the fact that we are actually fighting for each meter in this almost trench war with Plotinus. So I myself find it difficult to wrestle with this thought. So do reread the treatise. Do reread above all the part on Eidos that I sent you, the notes on Eidos that I sent you. And next week we start going into the text itself together. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So
sorry, I have a problem. I'm not in the email list, so I cannot receive any email.
You are not in the email list, not even on eDimension?
On eDimension, I am in it already, but for the email list, I cannot receive your email. So, like today's.
But if you are in eDimension, you should be in the email list already.
But I don't know why I cannot receive your email.
Well, you know, send me an email and I'm gonna contact the office that deals with these things.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Are you in the Telegram group?
Me? No, I'm not.
No, asking him because.
No, I'm also not. I'm also not.
Oh, okay. I think I can send you the link because we also have our own discussions after class.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Prof.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. See you around.
Bye.